Hello, linguists. This is it, episode 11C. This is your final episode with content. There's still work ahead of us, but we have arrived at that moment that I've been looking forward to the entire semester. We've come through the trials and travails of phonetics and Proto-Indo-European and Old English and Middle English and Early Modern and the 18th century, and we have arrived at the current moment, and the last thing to do in this course together is just to celebrate. People are always sending me tidbits. I am always collecting odd bits of quirky details about language and the English language, and I've thrown all of those together into a fun, really irrational, non-ordered, just kind of splattering of crazy and wild and enjoyable things that I love about language. And so let's end the content portion of the course with a celebration of language. Have you become Kermie? Wherever you go, you're always thinking about linguistics, linguistics, linguistics. Before we leave Old English behind, let's cement it one level deeper into our brains by doing it together. Say it with me. You know you've been doing it in your dreams since back when we learned it together. Now let us praise the Heaven Kingdom's warden. Nu shulon herian, heaven reaches weard. Meo todes meachte and his mod je thank. Werk wilder vader, swahe wundere je hwas, eche drichten or onstealde. He ers chop, heor dan bearnum, heavon to rove, halli schippend. Tha middanjard, mon kunnes weard, eche drichten, after Theoda, firum foldan, Freya almichti. We began with Proto-Indo-European, and we began English here, and look at how far we've come. By the way, if you weren't paying attention throughout this course, if you've just kind of nodded off back 3 months ago, just this slide will basically catch you up on all that's been going on. English doesn't borrow from other languages. English follows other languages down dark alleys, knocks them over, and goes through their pockets for loose grammar. That's basically all I've had to say to you. This course in another nutshell takes about 10 minutes. I didn't include it in this episode, but I highly recommend you follow that link or search History of English Combined. There's this wonderfully drawn 10-minute summary of really everything we've talked about in this course. The Anglo-Saxons, the Norman Conquest, Webster's Dictionary, Johnson's Dictionary. You are in about the best position of anyone on the planet to appreciate all of the humor in here. By the way, that's the Angles and Saxons driving up in their boats, and that's the Jutes up on top, because the language becomes Anglo-Saxon. And the Jutes are like, hey, what about us? What about us Jutes? We don't get no respect. Highly recommended. As I said, there's no rhyme or reason to what's going to happen in this episode, so this is just some stuff I find cool. For instance, what Puritans named their children in the 16th century, taken from a book you can see there on the right from 1880. The background here is that the Puritans, or as they were called at the time, precisians, were sort of hyper-Protestants. They didn't think that the Protestant Reformation had gone far enough in breaking with the Catholic Church of Rome, and so they wanted, that's one reason many of them came to England. They were even too Protestant-y for England. And many came to America, that is. And they would give their children names to brand them from birth with their sort of extreme religious viewpoints. And here are some of them. Imagine coming into the world with this moniker already attached. Praise God. That's not too bad. That's from the Barebone family. Rich source of crazy names. They actually gave their name to a parliament in 1653. Some of this is pre-England back in Sussex. How about this? If Christ had not died for thee, thou hadst been damned. That's all hyphenated, and that is a first name. The guy became an economist. Fear God, also a barebone. Jesus Christ came into the world to save. That sounds like an entire Fanny Crosby hymn, doesn't it? Brother of damned barebone. Oh, goodness. Talk about names being self-fulfilling prophecies. Imagine when you're going through names for children you might have someday. Damned. I actually don't know if that's better or worse than if Christ had not died for thou hast been damned. No Merit Vinall, born in Sussex. Sorry for Sin, Coopard, another resident of Warbleton. Die Well, a brother of Farewell Sykes, who died in 1865. The idea being that a person's death reveals their character. They've lived in a way that enables them to die a good and proper death, the Ars Moriendi. Imagine naming that to a baby. Humiliation Hind, oh, good old Humiliation Hind, who, like George Foreman, had multiple children and named them all after himself. Called both his kids Humiliation Hind. Poor children. And my favorite, Kill Sin Pimple, did jury service in the 1650s. Oh, boy. I'm surprised the person, Kill Simple, I don't know if that's a male or female name, made it through middle school to get all the way to jury service. You'd think that child would have died on the playground in junior high. Some of those Puritan names survive today. We know people named Felicity, there's a TV show, or Hope, or Prudence, or Amity, or Verity, meaning truth, or Trinity. I have some numbers from 2012. These names were commonly given, and Trinity seemed to have spiked in 1999, and I'm absolutely certain that had no influence other than the ancient Puritan tradition of name-giving. Just a collection of some old-fashioned bad words, thanks to Sheena Van Rokel, who's now, I believe, a soccer coach out in the world. She sent these back to me. Feel free to just work these back into the English language of today. Be jabbers. That, like many, is a euphemism. It's really by Jesus. You see the B and the J in there. But jabbier, Irish. Dad sizzle is another goddamn with sizzling. A whole range of dad forms. Dad meaning God, dad gum, dad. Oh, I've heard dad gum, dad blast, dad seas, dad rat, dad swamp, and many more. Thunderation is like damnation. And great horn spoon. We really have no idea. Possibly seafaring slang, so, hunting for Moby Dick, looking at the Big Dipper, swearing by the great horn spoon? I don't know, but I love it. Bring it back. Gosh all Potomac. The gosh again is God, as in gosh almighty, gosh a hemlock, but gosh all Potomac is one of the earliest ones in the Dictionary of American English on Historical Principles. Potomac. Seriously. Gee, Rover Cripes is one of the many ways that people say Jesus Christ. I like that. Sounds like a Disney character. By St. Booger and all the saints at the backside door of purgatory. We owe that to Sterne from Tristram Shandy, a wonderful novel with all kinds of playful stuff in it. But that deserves, just slip that into a chemistry paper, some kind of lab report or something. Your professors will love it. You'll also learn whether they're reading every word you write. And by the double-barreled jumping gymnity, which sounds kind of impressive. Like something Tom of Bedlam would have said as when he's gone crazy in King Lear. Some more slang from the past. A mall buzzer was a criminal, especially a pickpocket who preys on women. That is, they buzz by malls, or I guess today we call that a Jennifer buzzer, or whatever the most common woman's name is. Spizzarinctum, which sounds like something you really don't want to have to go to the proctologist for, but it just meant high spirits or nerve. A Baptist Sunday school class seeking new recruits advertised red-hot lessons with spep and spizzarinctum. Just, if you're a church-going type, you might suggest your church put that on their marquee. Woofy! That's flapper slang from the 1920s. When Shirley appeared on the beach, she was wearing painted over with birds and hearts and things sort of woofy, if you get me. No, I don't. Sorry. Bazoo is your mouth. Never opened his bazoo, or shut your bazoo. Fracture. We think we know that word. Filled with delight, causing laughter. 1950s. A movie fractured me. I kind of like that, right? Cracking up. Genchi, meaning excellent, also 1950s. Hit song, 15-year-old daughter. That's the font of new words in life, other than Shakespeare. For hours I could hear the radio turn to a Genchi, I believe is the word. Turn to a Genchi station. Well, it might have been, but it no longer is the word. And dingus. We still have this. Did you know it goes back to the game of Tiddlywinks? By the way, if you're missing out on the rule of Tiddlywinks or you think it's a simple game, just check out the words that the game of Tiddlywinks gave to the English language. You take a wink, put it on a dingus, press a tiddledy on the wink, and you make it jump into the wink pot. If you succeed, you're entitled to a deficiency. And for every wink you jump into the ding pot, from the do wink you count a flickle-diddy, and you keep on operating the tink-winkle. Oh, this is getting so rude. Upon the pollywog until the points so carried equal to the sum of the point of the bog whip multiplied by the pooterinctum, like a spizzerinctum, I assume, and added to the contents of the wink pot of the words to that effect, and you have won the game. Simple, right? Anyone can play. On the subject of punctuation and how it arose since Lowth and the prescriptivists of the 18th century, there have constantly been these articles on it's a catastrophe for the apostrophe, that there's something called the Greengrocers Apostrophe, where you see things like pears with an S, or apples with an S, or cucumbers with an S, with an apostrophe S. There's even a phrase for that greengrocers, for some reason, tend to like apostrophes in that. I took this picture at our very own lumberyard here in town. In the left go things belonging to a can, and in the right go things belonging to a bottle. People have been complaining about this forever, but really, it just points out, I think, the muddle of modern punctuation and the very recent phenomenon of modern standardized punctuation, and in fact, all of the alternative punctuations that people used, which didn't survive. You might think there's an obviousness to modern punctuation, when in fact it's just certain marks that got canonized and others did not. And if you think that we are losing apostrophes, you're probably exactly right. No one texts with them, where McWhorter says text is fingered speech. But check out where we used to be with the 1865 Alice in Wonderland. Double contractions. Advice from a caterpillar. The caterpillar and Alice looked at each other for some time in silence. At last the caterpillar took the hookah, he's smoking a hookah, Indian, out of his mouth, and addressed her. Who are you? Not an encouraging opening, Alice replied. I hardly know, sir, just at present. I knew who I was when I got up this morning, but I think I must have been changed several times since then. Ah, the wisdom of Alice in Wonderland. What do you mean by that? Explain yourself. Well, I can't explain myself, I'm afraid, because I'm not myself, you see. I don't see. And notice the punctuation of the response. I'm afraid I can't put it more clearly, Alice replied, very politely, for I can't understand it myself. What's the deal with the extra apostrophes there, Alice? Well, Charles Dodgson, who never admitted to being Lewis Carroll, but was, explained, critics have objected to certain innovations that he made in spelling, such as can't or won't. But in reply, in very 18th century fashion here in the 19th century, he argues based on logic. As if logic had anything to do with language. I can only plead my firm conviction that the popular usage is wrong. As to can't, it will not be disputed that in all the other words ending in N apostrophe T, these are an abbreviation of not. And he's right. For many uses of the apostrophe is a missing letter. In don't, it's do not. The apostrophes, hey, there used to be an O here, and there no longer is. Well, what about won't? The first apostrophe is needed because the word would is abridged to w. But I hold it proper to spell don't with only one apostrophe because the word is here complete. Such strange places you arrive when you apply reason and logic to language. So we used to have even more apostrophes in the original Alice. And here are some historical punctuation marks that did not last. My favorite is the interrobang, where you ask something which is both shocking and a question. So it's an exclamation mark plus a question mark. I love the percontation point, or it's a rhetorical question. Don't ask, answer. There's an irony mark. There's an acclamation point, which is really 2 exclamation points. Isn't the love point cute? On the right, you can signify certitude, or authority, or doubt, or sarcasm. Or, and this is truly useful, think about it, bottom right, exclamation comma. Why is it that if you want to say something emphatic with an exclamation, your sentence has to be over? What if you want to go on? Well, the exclamation comma, of course. See? Lots of other alternatives that simply did not last. I have a petition, bring back the interrobang. If you'd like to sign it, please do. If you have any idea who I can send it to, also, I'd like to know that. Just so you know that we have not plumbed the full depth of linguistics. This was not all of linguistics in one class. Oh my goodness, no. We have only scratched the surface of a couple of areas of linguistics, not even begun most of the areas. But one thing people study, for instance, are the dialects of North American. Well, Standard English has very little dialectical variation, but there are many versions of English which are not Standard English in North America. McWhorter's very interested in these Creoles, and I have some interest myself. Let's sample a little bit of the other Englishes that exist right here on the continent with us in North America. Here's a Hawaiian Creole, and you might think when I start to read this that I'm mocking. Believe me, I'm not. I'm reading this with the awe of an ornithologist who sees a new bird or discovers a new species in a new ecosystem. Here's a bit of Hawaiian Creole. It uses the sounds of the native Hawaiian Polynesian language and the grammar that got mixed into remember what a Creole is, 2 languages sort of blend. And so this is the Jesus book in Hawaiian Creole. Listen to how lovely it is. Godwin gets so plenty love and aloha for the people inside the world that he will send me, his one and only boy, so that everybody that trusts me no get cut off from God, but get the real kind life that stay to the max forever. I love that. Hawaiian Creole. Here's a Hawaiian Creole prodigal son. We could study this at great length and notice the sounds that are missing. That's probably because they are not included in the native indigenous language of Hawaii, so they get left out in Hawaiian Creole English. We could notice different verb tenses. We could notice some different vocabulary. I'll just give you a little bit of it. One time, one old man, he got 2 sons. Speak inside Bible. That means that a Bible says. One old son and one young son. This young son, he too much pakiki. Words entering English. He speak the old man, different preposition structure. Give me my share. I let go another praise. I tired this praise. So they don't have L, the lateral liquid, so they replace it with the retroflex liquid, praise. So Papa, he give his share and the older brother his share. All same, half. Pretty soon, bye, that is by and by, young son, he go another place, look see. He throw away everything he got. He lose all money. He make big luau, yay luau. He drink plenty okalehao. Shoots crap, play card, any kind he do. He find plenty wahine, make big time. All same how they speak, whoopee. I'll let you read that. It has an interesting, notice the 1929 date of this, and notice how in the next paragraph, empresigo, speak me too sorry this time, country got depression this time, no home hana gotch. There's what? Depression enters into the Hawaiian Creole, just like wahine enters into English from the other direction. I'm very fascinated, as are many people at Northwestern, by the Gullah Creole of English. This is spoken mainly on the Outer Bank Islands in northern Georgia coast, and the South Carolina coast. I've actually been to an island to hear this live, and it's an English Creole. And again, I would encourage you, don't think of this as incorrect English or English minus. Think of this as English plus. Think of this as how every language came to exist, as a combination of two meeting languages. So a lot of the forms here are West African, because the slaves would have brought that language with them. And the grammar and the pronunciation and the vocabulary all build together with English to make something that's like what standard English is, and yet it has its own flavor. Here, listen to this. You notice there's a simplified form of pronouns. There are also no THs. Very common when languages, English, creolizes with other languages. They often don't have interdental fricatives, th and th, so they get replaced with alveolar stops, duh. Here's Liz, and she's writing about a project, Jeff Barker in the theater department, which Liz has also been in. They like to do sort of Bible performances. And a while ago, students did them in Gullah. So coming up on the next page is one of my students, Jacob Christensen, doing the Temptation of Jesus.
Remember this portion of the story of God, as it is written in the book that we love, from the book of Matthew, from the New Testament. Out of that, the Holy Spirit lead Jesus into the wilderness, where the devil tried to make him do something he ain't ought to do. When Jesus ain't yam nothing for 40 days and 40 nights, he been a hungry down. The devil would try to make people do evil thing, come to Jesus there and tell him, say, since you're God's son, change these rock here for turn into bread. Jesus answer him, say, they done read down in the good book, say, it take more than something for yam for make people live for truth. It take every word that come out of God's mouth. Then the devil carried Jesus to the holy city Jerusalem. He put him way up on top the most high part of God's house. He tell him, say, since you're God's son, throw yourself down from here. Because they don't read down in the good book, say, God want to give order to the angel them. Tell them to take care of you. The angel them go and touch you in the hand so that you ain't going to hurt even your foot on a rock. Jesus tell the devil, say, they don't read down another thing in the good book. Say, must don't test the Lord your God. Out of that, the devil take Jesus up to a high place and show him all the countrydom in the whole world wide and all the power and all the pretty thing what they got. He tell Jesus, say, I'm going to give you all them things if you bow down and worship me up. Jesus tell him, say, give way from you, Satan. Because they done read down in the good book, say, must worship the Lord your God and must don't serve nobody separate. Then the devil left Jesus and the angel come to take care of it.
Isn't that beautiful? I hope you hear the music in that, and I hope you hear that's someone's heart language. And when they hear the Bible, any text at all, written, read in that language, that's that book speaking to their heart. Next on our Magical Mystery Tour is The World's Mildest Oath. I love this series called Foyle's War. It's about an inspector detective during the First World War. And it is so meticulously crafted that it gets the vocabulary right. So many historical films are like, I'm like, yeah, that's someone from Los Angeles in 2015 pretending to be, in 1915. But this, they get the vocabulary right. There's even a book and a web page which will tell you what their idioms mean. And at one point, Brigadier Harcourt says, "First the radio, now this. I don't know what the blue pencil's going on." And I'm jumping up and down on the couch next to my wife, nerding out like, oh my gosh, he just swore by a blue pencil. I must know what this means. Well, there was a BBC radio program which ran for a year early in the war and featured Jack Warner. And he would refer to, in a war, you have to, all of the letters that come in and out of the country are opened by the government. My grandfather actually had that job, Ernest Murphy. He read letters that came into America through Miami for the war effort in, I think, French, Italian, Spanish, and I believe German too, because you can't have sensitive information being, leaked. You can't have spies sending information in and out. So that censorship was done in England with a blue pencil. And people would hate this because you'd get a letter from maybe your son in the war or your friend in another country, and part of it's blue penciled out. And so you're like, what the blue pencil is going on here? So if you don't like to swear, but you really need a way to get upset, and if you like confusing people, just say, "What the blue pencil is going on here?" And just look. Grammar also is changing. We have a real problem in English with having to identify gender. If I say you, I do not have to encode in that you whether you're a male or a female, married or single or otherwise. But if I refer to not to you, but if I refer to you because you're standing over there and I'm referring to you to someone else, I've got to point out whether you're male or female. That's strange that we have to make that distinction only in one person and only in the singular, right? Only in third person singular. That person over there, I've got to tell you if they're male or female. There's no other choice. And so we have these workarounds like every child has his monkey. Well, that makes all children he's, and that's exclusive, and that has real effect on the way people imagine their lives. Or we pluralize. Every child has their monkey, but then you've got their plural referring to every singular. It's not grammatical. So some kids in Baltimore have their solution. They're coming up with yo, and there are a lot of solutions being invented for this problem, especially when we're being more sensitive to gender identity. Instead of he or she, we've got yo, a gender-neutral third-person pronoun. And it's amazing because, as a teacher points out, pronouns don't usually change. They're usually pretty fixed. But leave it to the youth to be the inventors of something that the language, I think, really does need. A wonderfully fun book if you're a word fan, The Meaning of Tango. So let's go straight to The Meaning of Tango. This is fun words in languages around the world. I assume someone read every dictionary of every language and came up with words for things that we don't have, because there aren't just a fixed number of things in the world, and every language has its label for those things. The languages of the world refer to different things or divide up the things of the world, the references, differently. So, Kummerspeck is a German word which literally means worry bacon. I'll let you read the definition. Also German, Drachenfutter is dragon fodder. That's a little sexist. Also in German, die beleidigte Leberwurst spielen. That's just beyond. I'm a Germanist, and I'm still boggled by that one. Maybe it's a Backpfeifengesicht. A fish, a face that cries out for a fist in it. The Dutch word, I'm not very good with my Dutch, uitwaaien, means walking in windy weather for fun. Who knew that was one thing? Those fun-loving Netherlanders should have the last word. The phrase for skimming stones is automatopoetic. It sounds like, think the last time you skimmed a stone and got 7, 8, 10, 12 maybe. It's plim plam platter, plim plam platter. That wonderful. Albanians have 27 expressions for mustache. The vetul column is pencil thin eyebrows. Vetul per pjakur are joined together. It's the unibrow. And arched are vettehulen. In Russian, a koshatnik is a dealer of stolen cats. I don't know, but my life was not complete until I had that. Spanish speakers in Central America have an aviador, which you can look up. And of course, the meaning of the word tango is the titular word from Pascuanese language spoken on Easter Island to borrow objects from a friend's house, one by one, until nothing is left. Hinglish is a combination of Hindi, spoken mostly in India, and English, and it has its own vocabulary, which we can import into English if we feel like it, because there are no rules on these things. If someone made up the rules, it'd be me, and I'm telling you, there are no rules. Standard English has rules, but talking doesn't have any rules at all, so feel free to play. If you're glassy, means you need a drink, a glass of something. A time pass is a way of distracting yourself. A hooligan is a bad mash. In English, we can prepone. In Hinglish, we can postpone. In Hinglish, they can prepone. They have archaic phrases like stepney, which means a spare. This is really extraordinary. It's a spare wheel, a spare mobile, meaning that is a mobile phone, or even a spare mistress. Its origins aren't in Stepney, East London, but Stepney Street in Wales, where a popular brand of spare tire was once manufactured, and you do spell tire with a Y, over in Great Britain. Imagine the travels that word has seen and the meaning route that it's taken in its life. While we're thinking about British forms of British, here is a wonderful short video. I wish I could do this as well as this guy does. A tour of accents across the British Isles.
Received pronunciation is the great communicator. As soon as you deviate from that and you go into London speech, for example, then you lose a little bit of the communication. Cockney is based on East Anglian, Suffolk, Norfolk, Cambridgeshire. This is often by actors confused with the West Country, where the R's come in, and then you get Dorset and Somerset, get into Cornwall. Devon's slightly different. It goes into the nose a bit more like that. Then you go up north to Yorkshire. It's nice if you get a word that's got one of the predominant sounds in it, like Yorkshire. Then you cross the Pennines into Lancashire, where it gets much more flexible and fluid in the mouth. Liverpool is there too, you know. It's Scouse. It's a mixture of all kinds of sounds. One of those is Northern Irish with the raising inflections, but you don't get the raising inflections down in Dublin, where it has that poetic quality, which is sometimes thought of as being not different from Highland speech, which is also quite poetic and almost Scandinavian. And then you come down to Glasgow and into the lowlands of Scotland, where you get glottal stops and things like that. And then you come down the west coast and you're in Wales, North Wales, where it's breathy like that, and down into South Wales, where you get much heavier, and Welsh people who sometimes even sound a bit drunk.
Isn't that marvelous? He mentions Cockney. Cockney, if you don't know, is it's a sort of street language from London, and it has this wonderful sort of elusive metaphorical, it's kind of a kenning, where they will replace a word with a phrase which rhymes with it. So me mate would be me china plate, and they've glottal stops instead of T's. A word would be a lemon curd, and you can really make these up as you want, because it's a kind of creative, it's like a jazz bit of language. Me billy goat is me throat. Pontius Pilate is the toilet, and the crown jewels are tools. These get kind of funny. Poor George Michael. How he deserved that, I really do not know. Shaken, not stirred, is how 007 likes his martinis. That's a bird, which is in turn a woman. Lot of decoding necessary there. Is I'm so frisky, is me whiskey. German beer is engineer. Funny. I've got taken green eggs and ham is my exam. Yay, Canterbury Tales are Wales. Richard III for turd. Britney Spears for tears. Coffee nice, trouble and strife. Joy me life is me wife. Which leads to the question, could there be a Cockney Bible?
The Archbishop of Canterbury
Let's watch this game show and find out.
Once endorsed a Cockney version of the Bible. Is this possible, David Steen?
Why would you need a Cockney version of the Bible?
It was to make the Bible more accessible to the man on the street.
So,
Some blush tomorrow, stigmata.
George Carey endorsed it in 2001. The feeding of the 5,000 becomes Jesus feeding 5,000 geezers from 5 loaves of Uncle Ned and 2 Lillian Gish. Jesus heals a deaf and dumb man is translated as Jesus heals a Mutt and Jeff geezer who couldn't rabbit either.
Oh, please let this be true.
again, it'd be great if that was true.
Wouldn't it be? I'd buy it. I'd buy one of
We'd
those.
have heard about it, though.
You would, wouldn't you? Chas and Dave would have done a CD.
Why is that clever, the rhyming stuff? Why is that good? You're using language to make it unclear. Say what you
Do you
mean.
think it was to stop the police knowing what you were talking about?
Well, people shouldn't stop the police knowing what they're talking about.
So what are you going to say?
Yeah.
I'd like to believe it, but I think it's a lie.
It has to be a lie, doesn't it?
OK, we'll say lie.
You're saying lie. It is true. Yes, amazingly, it's true, and I have the book here.
Without Adam and Eve it.
Let me read a bit to you, the Lord's Prayer.
I'm going to hate this, aren't I?
Yes, you are. You are.
OK, I'll brace myself.
Hello, Dad.
Oh, God.
No, Dad.
Oh, sorry.
Hello, Dad, up there in good old heaven. Your name is well, great and holy, and we respect you, Gov. We hope we can all have a butcher's at heaven and be there as soon as possible, and we want to make you happy, Gov. It is true. When the book came out, it was a massive hit, which is also Cockney rhyming slang.
Did you get that last bit? Oh, I have a copy right here, in fact, in case you want to look at it. There's this wonderful variety that I've been trying to celebrate with you of language. Once you let go of the niggling sort of adherence to rules, as if that was the only reason we wrote in order to write correctly, and realize that we speak in a multitudinous variety of fascinating ways as individual as our own life experiences and mouths, then you become truly sad about what McWhorter says in Power of Babel. There are about 6,000 languages now. He predicts that if you live to be very old, maybe 100 or so over the next century, you'll see 95% of those languages die. In other words, we'll go from 6,000 to roughly 30 mega languages, which will be the jobs, the languages you can get a job in. They'll be the power languages, and all of the other languages will die out. Imagine what that means. Before we confront that sadness a little bit more visually, here's the world's strangest case of language death. Technically, a language is dead when linguists say when no children are being brought up in it any longer. But you could argue that a language called Ayapaneco, which is spoken in central Mexico, died when its two only native speakers stopped talking to each other. And there's a fascinating Daily Mail article about that. So the language died because, well, no one is speaking it anymore. But then, thank you, Charla, for sending this back to me years after HEL, the two of them made up. So what is that now? What's the state of this language? The only word I can come for is zombie language, the undead back-to-life language, or the Lazarus language. So we have Ayapaneco again. It's hard to avoid the deforestation or the destruction of of world ecology as a metaphor for the destruction of the world's linguistic ecology. This is forests in Borneo over the last 70 years. We're sad about that for quite good reasons. I wonder what we think about the loss of really a similar number of the world's languages. with the stories, the myths, the songs, the sounds that can't be translated, because when you lose a language, you've lost the handle and the melody and the music of the culture and the life experience of the people who spoke it. And so, if there's anything to do about this, I really don't know, but mourning, I think, is certainly an appropriate response. But one cannot mourn for too long. As we approach the end, I want to leave you almost last with the view of Stephen Fry. There he is with Hugh Laurie. You might know him as House, the Doctor. Stephen Fry, wonderful actor, director, author, comedian. Here is his take on language, and I could not agree more. Sit back and enjoy kinetic typography from Stephen Fry.
For me, it's a cause of some upset that more Anglophones don't enjoy language. Music is enjoyable, it seems, so are dance and other athletic forms of movement. People seem to be able to find sensual and sensuous pleasure in almost anything but words these days. Words, it seems, belong to other people. Anyone who expresses themselves with originality, delight, and verbal freshness is more likely to be mocked, distrusted, or disliked than welcomed. The free and happy use of words appears to be considered elitist or pretentious. Sadly, desperately sadly, the only people who seem to bother with language in public today bother with it in quite the wrong way. They write letters to broadcasters and newspapers in which they are rude and haughty about other people's usage, and in which they show off their own superior knowledge of how language should be. I hate that, and I particularly hate the fact that so many of these pedants assume that I'm on their side. When asked to join in a "let's persuade this supermarket chain to get rid of their 5 items or less" sign, I never join in. Yes, I am aware of the technical distinction between less and fewer, and between uninterested and disinterested, and infer and imply, and all the rest of them, but none of these are of importance to me. None of these are of importance, I said there. You'll notice the old pedantic me would have insisted on none of them is of importance. But I'm glad to say I've outgrown that silly approach to language. Oscar Wilde, and there have been few greater and more complete lords of language in the past 1,000 years, once included with a manuscript he was delivering to his publishers a compliment slip in which he had scribbled the injunction, "I'll leave you to tidy up the woulds and shoulds, wills and shalls, that's and whiches, etc." Which gives us all encouragement to feel less guilty, don't you think? There are all kinds of pedants around, with more time to read and imitate Lynn Truss and John Humphreys than to write poems, love letters, novels and stories, it seems. They whip out their Sharpies and take away and add apostrophes from public signs, shake their heads at prepositions which end sentences, and mutter at split infinitives and misspellings. But do they bubble and froth and slobber and cream with joy at language? Do they ever let the tripping of the tips of their tongues against the tops of their teeth transport them to giddy euphoric bliss? Do they ever yoke impossible words together for the sound sex of it? Do they use language to seduce, charm, excite, please, affirm and tickle those they talk to? Do they? I doubt it. They're too farting busy sneering at a greengrocer's less-than-perfect use of the apostrophe. Well, sod them to Hades. They think they're guardians of language. They're no more guardians of language than the Kennel Club is the guardian of dog kind. And the worst of this sorry bunch of semi-educated losers are those who seem to glory in being irritated by nouns becoming verbs. How dense and deft a language development do you have to be? If you don't like nouns becoming verbs, then for heaven's sake avoid Shakespeare, who made a doing word out of a thing word every chance he got. He tabled the motion and chaired the meeting in which nouns were made verbs. I suppose new examples from our time might take some getting used to. He actioned it that day, for instance, might strike some as a verbing too far, but we've been sanctioning, envisioning, propositioning and stationing for a long time, so why not actioning? Because it's ugly, whinge the pedants. Well, it's only ugly because it's new and you don't like it. Ugly in the way Picasso, Stravinsky and Eliot were once thought ugly, and before them Monet, Mahler and Baudelaire. Pedants will also claim, with what I'm sure is eye-popping insincerity and shameless disingenuousness, that their fight is only for clarity. Well, this is all very well, but there's no doubt what, for example, 5 items or less means. Just as only a dolt can't tell from the context and from the age and education of the speaker whether disinterested is used in the proper sense of non-partisan or in the improper sense of uninterested. No, the claim to be defending language for the sake of clarity almost never ever holds water, nor does the idea that following grammatical rules in language demonstrates clarity of thought and intelligence of mind. Having said this, I admit that if you want to communicate well for the sake of passing an exam or job interview, then it's obvious that wildly original and excessively heterodox language could land you in the soup. I think what offends examiners and employers when confronted with extremely informal, unpunctuated and haywire language is the implication of not caring that underlies it. You slip into a suit for an interview and you dress your language up too. You can wear what you like linguistically or sartorially when you're at home or with friends, but most people accept the need to smarten up under some circumstances. It's only considerate. But that's an issue of fitness, of suitability. It has nothing to do with correctness. There's no right language or wrong language any more than there are right or wrong clothes. Context, convention and circumstance are all. I can't deny that a small part of me still clings to a ghastly Radio 4 newspaper letter writer pedantry, but I fight against it in much the same way I try to fight against my gluttony, anger, selfishness and other vices. I must confess, for example, that I find it hard not to wince when someone aspirates the word, and it is a word, H-A-I-T.
I hope that gives you some freedom. I hope this course has given you some freedom to bubble and froth and joy at the sheer sound sex of language and to enjoy language, to use it for pleasure and expression rather than to be one of the eye-poppingly insincere pedants who delight in their so-called knowledge of correcting others as if that's what language was for. Here's a little email I got from Julie Mitchell years after she took HEL. I was hoping you still have your students read that Power of Babel book. History was a little clearer to me after that book. It made me appreciate the fluidity of language. My day-to-day life is a mixture of Spanish and English dialects that I think you would find amusing. Just now, one of my clients told her son that La Señora te va a dar un timeout. The selection of which words enter the different languages is fascinating. Appointment is another one. Hardly any of my Spanish-speaking clients use the Spanish word to schedule appointments with me. Quiero un appointment para mañana. I should start making a list. These were some of the things that I had. And John writes back, "That's great to hear. Babel was a blast to write and is my favorite of my children. I just got, for some reason, a box of 25 copies of the British version of the paperback. I don't know what publishers think I can do with care packages like this. If you have any suggestions, feel free to send them to me and I will pass them on." And with that, I want to leave you with the one abiding lesson of HEL. The one thing you must not forget, that if you've been paying attention, you have most certainly learned this. Thank goodness we don't speak Basque. Here's a phrase. Here's more than a phrase. Here's a conversation in Basque, a non-Proto-Indo-European language spoken up in the mountains in the Pyrenees Mountains, between France and Spain. I will render it for you. Elin, Barkatu, driver. Zer, Elin, how da donostiako autobusa? Driver, Ez, Elin, non dago. Mercedes, Hankse, Esterico Asco. Ellen approaches a young woman waiting at the bus rank. Aizu, Baidekazu, Euskaras. The woman just smiles and shakes her head. Ellen tries a young man. Euskaras Barakizu. Bye. Aizu, Donostiako autobusa, howda. Bye. Bye, haukseda. Ellen. Thank goodness we don't speak Basque. Well, guess what? Like Aeneas, Dante, Orpheus, and if you believe in that kind of thing, Jesus, you have made it through hell. Woohoo! Congratulations!